Welcome back to 31 Below, the show where we go beneath the surface with people who are shaping the future of games, content, and digital creation. Today, we've got a very special episode. We've got Matt. He is the developer of Severed Steel and Echo Point Nova. It's a great episode. We've got a lot of insight into the game development process, his passion for gaming. We also talk about some industry trends and things like that. So stay tuned and let's get into it. But dude, I appreciate it. So, by the way, both of the games that you've made so is Echo Point Nova and Severed Steel, those are the only two video games you've ever made, or have you made stuff before?
Yeah, pretty much. There's like, in the depths of the internet, there's like a mod for Morrowind I made that no one ever played.
Oh,
so
okay.
I don't know if that counts. But yeah, as far as games you can buy and people actually play, yeah, Severed Steel, Echo Point Nova.
Did you ever think, because Severed Steel was 2021, Echo Point Nova was last year.
Yeah.
And to me, like, if those are the only two games you ever made, I mean, two bangers out of the gate.
Oh, thank you.
So
yeah, only down from here. Next game's gonna suck. Yeah.
Well, and I think you just had a content update come out on the 9th.
Yeah.
But yeah, both those games are great. I mean, what prompted you to go from making a mod from Morrowind to making a movement shooter where you can, there's destructible environments, fast movement, bullet time?
Yeah. Pretty much like open world games are just an insane undertaking. And that's what got me into game development, like the idea of building like my dream open world game. But it's like when you're getting started, you don't really know your limits, and like that was way too much for like a first time indie dev. So
right.
I also love first person shooters. Like those are my two genres, RPGs and first person shooters. So I was like, well, if I can't do an RPG, maybe I'll do my other favorite genre. Start dabbling and making a first person shooter, and that worked out.
Yeah. I would say the first game, both of them are overwhelmingly positive. Well, and then you talk about open world stuff. I mean, Severed Steel is super corridor-esque. I mean, it's a pretty small environment, but then you have Echo Point Nova, which is, I mean, the map is massive.
Yeah, yeah.
So you can kind of see a lot of that, at least play into the second game. So did you kind of want to merge both of those genres a little bit?
Yeah, and so Severed Steel, there was a moment where Severed Steel was open world. It used to be like the building you were in was one amongst other buildings, and I even had a snowmobile at one point. You were in like an Arctic.
Can we get the content?
I could probably find an old YouTube video, but you're in like an Arctic base, and then like you could leave the base, hop on your little your snowmobile, and cruise to the next base. And again, it was too much. Even my publisher even told me nicely, they're like, "What are you doing here?" Like,
yeah.
You don't need an open world. Like, just do the shooting in the small rooms. And I'm like, fine, you're right. So, first, I don't know. I've always liked open world. I've never liked in games where you find a door you can't open or you find an invisible wall.
Yep.
It's always been a buzzkill for me. But Severed Steel, it just wasn't feasible to make it open world in the time with skills I had. But then in Echo Point Nova, my second game, I was like, all right, let's do open world, and it worked out. And I think it works well with the movement stuff, because like Severed Steel, you can move so fast, and some of the levels feel a little too small sometimes.
Right.
And then Echo Point Nova, you have like you're in the sky and you can go like 500 miles an hour, and there's room for you to do that.
Yeah, the hoverboard's sick, by the way.
Thank you.
That was super cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I've always been. Like my background as far as like content creation goes is Titanfall, and that's like the game that I've built a YouTube channel on and all that stuff.
Yeah, amazing.
So then I think going from that game to Severed Steel, it was like it was just so cool. Like the movement was slick, the gunplay was super good. I'm also a Fear fan.
Oh yeah. Oh,
so the bullet time being thrown in there too, that was such a good touch.
Yes.
So it was just such a nice meld of everything I enjoyed. Did you try and like do anything? I mean, was there anything that you saw in like FPS games that were missing at the time? Because like modern shooters, talk about going downhill. Personal opinion.
Yeah.
But like, did you see any niches that you were trying to fill that just weren't being serviced at the time of making those games?
I mean, the destructible environments is one. Like, I feel like there was a time where like, I don't know, when I was in high school, I felt like physics and we were becoming a big thing in first-person shooter games. Like Crysis, you can blow up the shacks.
You know, Battlefield Bad Company is a big one, too.
Bad Company. I love Bad Company, too. I played so much of that game. Yeah, blowing holes in walls with grenade launchers, and that felt like the future. But then I think the compromise was that, like, well, it seemed like the market wanted super high-fidelity environments, and it's really hard to do high-fidelity and destructible. Because if you can destroy things, you need dynamic lighting and you need all these really advanced physics stuff, and that comes at a cost to graphics. So it's not the direction games went. But I felt that was missing, so the destruction was a big part of it. And another thing is that sometimes I feel like FPS games lay on story too heavy. Some FPS games pull it off. Titanfall 2 pulled it off. That game has a great story. But a lot of times it feels tacked on. And so in Severed Steel, I was like, whatever story there is, you could move right through it. It's all about the action. We're not going to bore you with like my sad attempt to write.
So you're the writer for that one too?
Yeah, ish. I had some help from the publisher, but it was mostly me and Adam from the publisher. He helped out a bit, and we had a comic artist help us out. But the story is not what people think about when they think about Severed Steel.
Yeah, but I think that kind of goes back to like the old days. I'm 29, and my first FPS games that I really played were Halo, and those are definitely story games.
Yep.
But even before that, like I've gone back now and played the old Doom games. I've played through Quake multiple times.
Nice.
And those games, there were zero. Like there was story for sure. Like, the Cthulhu type monsters in Quake, but like it wasn't a focus, and I really like that.
Yes.
I want to shoot stuff.
John Carmack has some quote. It's a little cringe, but it's worth repeating. He's like, story in a shooter game is like story in a porn. It doesn't really make sense. I mean, I don't know if I agree, but
it doesn't actually add anything.
Yeah, but if John Carmack says it, that's one thing. But Carmack was the engine guy. I think Romero was the guy who did the lore. Maybe Carmack's brother, but that's not.
I think Romero did a lot of it, but then obviously he went on to make Daikatana, which wasn't exactly stellar, and is definitely chastised as a misstep for him. But I mean, Romero and John Carmack and all the guys that made those games are legendary.
Yes.
So I guess you probably took your story inspiration from those games, or I guess the lack thereof.
Yeah, just get right to the shooting. And, there's some context, like Doom, you're killing demons. Severed Steel's a more modern take on that. You're, like, fighting an evil corporation. That's very, like, modern, current day stuff. And that's all you need to know. They're bad. They're evil.
Yep, very black and white.
Yeah. You don't have to ponder the morality of your slaughter. No, it's just...
With some of the games, I mean, like it's great that you do that, but like I use like games as a form of escapism.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some games that I want to jump into and like think.
Yes.
But
there's a place
90% of the time, I just want to get in it. Like that's why some of the new Doom games have been so good. I think is because the story's there, but I can largely ignore it. Like especially Eternal in 2016, but like that.
Yeah, 2016. Like there's in the intro scene, like a guy on a screen starts giving you plot exposition. You just punch the screen.
Yeah, and
I'm like, yes.
That's definitely what a lot of people think about. So I guess going back to those games, and I guess Severed Steel. Is there any other like cut content that you didn't get to put in the game that you wish made it?
There is
besides the snowmobile.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I had a whole idea that there'd be like puzzles and stuff, or more physics interaction with the environment. Like Steel has the arm cannon. I spent a lot of time making a mode for the arm cannon that lets you like spray like a foam that you could build structures with.
Okay.
I don't know if you played Prey, the 2017 Prey. It was like an immersive sim.
Yep.
In a space station. That had like a goo gun that you could build structures with and climb on. So I spent a lot of time trying to get something like that in the game. But it didn't make sense because the game also, you have an insanely powerful movement system. So it was like, why build a structure when I can just wall run up the wall? It was such a clash of design philosophies. So that never made it in. And I had all sorts of ideas for like environmental puzzles and stuff and like electrified floors that you'd have to try to navigate. And none of that made it into the final game really. It just
more like platforming kind of stuff.
Yeah, which is hard in first person games, and it can just be frustrating. Like if someone's there and they're in the mood to like kill the baddies, and all of a sudden it's like, all right, time to navigate the SOAR level and you touch the floor, you die. It can really like kill the flow. So in the end, we just pretty much cut anything out that wasn't killing. And
I think that's the one thing that Doom Eternal did wrong.
Oh, with all the platforming?
Was the platforming stuff, which I actually didn't mind it at the time, but there were a lot of people that were kind of like, oh, this sucks. So, I want to shoot more cacodemons.
Yeah, it felt pretty good. But yeah, I guess sometimes it felt a little like, I don't know, maybe too broke the flow. The bloodlust, broke that.
I think there's something to be said. So I think a lot, and this is actually just a general thought that I had the other day, was a lot of games don't like give their own time to breathe.
Yes.
Like between
Yep.
arenas, set pieces, fights, encounters.
Yep.
There's no like I think Echo Point Nova does a great job where there's just times where you're kind of hoverboarding around the locations.
Yeah.
Maybe you're making the way to, an objective or a side spot that you're trying to look at, and you can like really take in everything.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of games don't do that. I like the platform for that. Like, I think it breaks everything up into different sections that you can like deep breath. I can like recollect myself and then go back in and play.
Yeah, because otherwise, if it's just constant violence, you kind of get desensitized to it, exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you never want players during combat to be like, I'm getting sick of this. Like, geez, like, let's... You want the combat... You always want when the combat ends, the players to want more. I think that's the ideal. And you give them a little break. Then more combat.
And then, so I guess you said you like Titanfall. Did you always want to make movement-based shooters? Is that... Because both games definitely are. Like, I think they're...
No, I didn't... When I first started Sever Seal, it was not so movement-y. I wanted to be a little more grounded, maybe more like Max Payne was my initial goal, which has a lot of movement, but you're not wall running and you're not double jumping in Max Payne. It's pretty like kind of like a badass cop more than like a crazy super soldier.
Yep.
And it was, but just like it just kind of came about through like adding fun things. And it just happened. Like it's like it would be kind of fun if you could wall run. I added that, and then like double jumping would really make movement feel a little smooth. And double jump added, and then the character's speed was always getting faster whenever I'd like polish the game up. The character's speed always ended up more because it just felt good. So I was just following what felt good. But Titanfall 2 definitely had some influence on me. Like I never set out like I want to make something that feels like Titanfall 2, but that game just felt so good. It was definitely like it left a mark on me. Like it just like imprinted in my brain. Like what
I think it does that for a lot of people.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean look
like
at the state of indie FPS games. Everyone's trying to make a Titanfall. There's so many.
Oh yeah, and that's why the guys that make that make Dusk and like Ultra Kill and all that, those guys pump out great games too. And Ultra Kill is a game that just like blows my mind every single time I play it.
Yeah, it's a phenomenon.
And then genuinely, like if I'm thinking of the best like movement games that are like, I mean, I can go back to like old shooters too, but I definitely think Echo Point Nova is definitely a better iteration than Severed Steel in a whole lot of ways. Like just the movement, the systems, the gameplays. Like to your credit, it's just so much more polished and good. Like I played it for like 6 hours in one sitting, and I was
nice.
Like you're right-eyed by the end of it.
Nice.
My wife came in and was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like,
"Yes."
It was a game. It was an indie game on Steam. She's over there like playing Fortnite. I'm like, I'm in my zone.
Nice. Yes. It works.
Like, it does. Oh, that's what I like, and I like the slow stuff too. Like I play some slow games, but it's just so addictive. So when you think of when you have like a concept of a game in your head, what is your kind of creative process to actually make the game?
Yeah, it's for my games so far. It's really just been like just adding fun things till it works. Like when I started working on Echo Point Nova, like I didn't plan for a hoverboard. I didn't plan for the islands over the clouds vibe. I didn't even plan for a grappling hook. Like I was just like,
that was a great addition, by the way.
It worked. I couldn't imagine the game without it. But so far it's just been like I'm making it up as I go along, just like adding fun things until eventually like it feels like a thing that people want to play. And a lot of it's just because I'm an indie dev. Like I think to realize a vision takes a budget because you have to pay people to make the art, and you have to keep on iterating on the art until it matches the vision in your head. But I don't have like the money or time for that, being like a very small indie dev. So it's really just like whatever I can make is what I'm gonna stick with because there's no time to like perfect it.
Right.
So it's just like I'm just kind of like rolling with the punches. Yeah.
Well, I think there's some genuineness with that. A lot of like newer games. Like if I go back to the old games I used to play, like Halo CE, it was very rough around the edges in a lot of ways, and there was some like genuineness to that. And there's the like feeling of a bunch of guys making a game that they're passionate about.
Yeah.
And I don't get that feeling sometimes anymore. Like when I played your games, like I actually first of all didn't even know it was one person that made them.
it's just to credit. Like I have guys help with the levels and the music and stuff. So I
Right.
don't want to take all the credit.
But like having one guy kind of lead the project was
Yeah.
impressive, and then sort of like it felt like someone was actually enjoying making a game that was supposed
Yeah,
to
it's
be
fun.
fun.
It's a lot of fun to work on.
Are you self-taught?
Yeah, yeah. I studied psychology in college. Actually got like a D in my programming class in college, which is pretty
yeah.
funny. Yeah.
So then, how did you learn to make games to this level?
I don't know. I get obsessed. Like, I mean, I taught my intro was weirdly like I was before this. I worked as a public school teacher. I was working in special education. That's more of a match for my psychology degree. But there was an opening for a games programming course for middle schoolers, and that caught my interest. And I'm like, well, I could probably at least teach myself to program at a middle school level, so I can teach these kids. So I applied for the
Right.
job, got the job, and did that for like 4 years. And I wonder if on some level, if I didn't know I was teaching myself game development, but on some level, I was like teaching the basics of programming, teaching kids the basics of what might make a game fun, like satisfying controls, feedback when you do things, like, how do you make an action in a game feel satisfying? So I think on some level that I was teaching myself through that. And then I started developing games as a hobby. That's where my Morrowind project came from, as like a side project.
Okay.
And yeah, so just kind of unintentionally taught myself how to do all this game dev
Well,
stuff.
and do you think the psychology piece ever plays into it a little bit? Like the fact like you were just talking about making players, feel certain things through like
Yeah.
inputs and reactions in the game world. Does that ever like come into your brain about like I'm not using my degree in like this sense, but I kind of am
Yeah.
a little bit.
I think maybe subliminally, like I never like open up a psychology textbook and like get ideas from that. And I wish, like, it's kind of funny, like I really would like to make a game where like the AI is really like noteworthy and advanced. But for my past 2 games, I have not. There just hasn't been the time or the need for it. The AI is pretty basic in my games so far. They're able to pretty decently navigate to a place where they can see the player and shoot at them. And there just hasn't, because you're moving so fast and you're killing so much. It would be a waste of time, I think, to like spend a lot of time on AI. But I would like eventually to have a game where the AI is really interesting and unpredictable and fun to mess with. Maybe my next game, but so far I haven't really been able to realize that.
Do you have a next game idea? You might not be able to
No,
say anything.
it's I'm comfortable sharing it with it. I haven't even started it yet, but it is like I eventually one day do want to take another stab at an RPG,
Okay.
and it'd be interesting. And I think about it a lot, like, well, how much of my combat game
Yeah,
reputation?
can we get a grappling hook?
Yeah, I know exactly. Like, but it's a funny thing. Like so much of RPGs is like the player has a lot of limits that they have to work around and level up and overcome. Whereas my games are like you're just pretty much a badass from square one. Echo Point Nova has some progression. You find weapons and perks and stuff, but you're pretty much a god when you start
Yep.
the game. So it would be a hard bridge to build. We'll see.
Do you think there's any because I don't know if many people even have conversations with like indie game development and kind of what it looks like. Are there any like common misconceptions that you see about kind of what the process looks like versus what you see?
Yeah, I mean, I think just where I see a lot of indie devs fall into a trap is they work on their game so much, but never like release a public demo. Like their games just like
Yep.
they have really cool GIFs and YouTube clips, but it takes years and years and years to reach a playable state where you can like put the demo on Steam and someone can download it, play it, and have fun. And I think a lot of people undersell. They forget that the point of it is for someone to play, and if no one can play it, like what are you doing?
Right.
And I think people need to really focus on getting like playable demos out that people can play.
I wonder if the idea of like the game, like maybe people think their game needs to be perfect to like get to that point.
Oh yeah, no, I think that's a big part of it, and it's that, but also like the early demos of Severed Steel and Echo Point Nova that were public were not nearly as fun as the final product. And
I'd
that's-
agree with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you put out the imperfect product. Some people can see the potential in it, and they'll have a little community, and they'll give you some ideas, and you can watch them play and see where it's failing them. and then you can make a better game. Whereas if the game only exists on your hard drive, you'll never get that. But I think the other thing is making a game playable for the public. It gets to the boring part of game development where you're making the settings menu, you're making control binds, you're making sure the installer works, you're figuring out how Steam's upload system works. And that's just like, that's tedious, boring stuff that I can't blame a lot of people for avoiding, but it's just part of the game. You gotta buck up and deal with it.
Were there any ideas, because you're talking about playtesting, which I think playtesting's huge, especially from like a QA standpoint in game development. And I know most games don't get to that point until their later stages.
Yeah.
Were there any ideas that you got from the community that you like implemented into those games? Anything that you can like distinctly remember is this is a great idea, I'm going to put it in?
I mean, Echo Point Nova, during the playtests, like the last playtest, weeks before launch, I was actually having people, I put up flyers in my neighborhood asking for games.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, to come over. I had my laptop set up in my dining room and I had people play it and I watched them play. And I found that people were getting really exhausted with those scan fights in Echo Point Nova. When you go to the thing, you activate, you fight all the baddies. And at the time, there was no, the treasure chests open up after you finish those scans? That wasn't in the game yet.
Oh, so there's no reward at the end of it?
There was no reward at the end of the fight. There was like...
Oh, okay.
You'd get 1 point towards increasing your HP, but that's so abstract. Like, who cares?
Right.
And then I was like, shit, like, this is a core part of the game, and people are bored. Fuck. Yeah. I even I was talking to one person, like, how do you feel about the fights? He's like, they're cool, but I feel like it needs a little something. And I'm like loot? And, like, gamers love loot. And he's like, yeah, maybe loot. And then that's when, like, then I was like, okay, every one of these fights needs a treasure chest. But that, at the time, I didn't have enough things to put in treasure chests. Right. That's a big part of why there's so many perks in the game. Because I had to think of rewards for the player for every fight. And then I had to think of fun character upgrades. And yeah, if the game launched without all those perks and without all those rewards, I don't think it would be overwhelmingly positive. I think that a lot of people would be like, yeah, this loop isn't working for me.
Yeah, and I think there's got to be like, cheese at the end of the maze, like
yes, especially
talking psychology.
Yes.
I think there's got to be something for someone to hang on to and grab. Like you talk about loot, like that's one of the reasons like Borderlands and the Elder Scroll games are so great. Like I remember I would play Oblivion.
Oh, so good.
And I would just mercilessly kill people all the time just because I wanted to get whatever stuff they had on them.
That's so When you see someone in a Bethesda game with cool armor, and you're like, "That can be mine." Oh,
100%.
It's so good.
That's exactly what I would do, and that's that was one of my main motivations for Skyrim and go getting all the dragon masks was just because I wanted the cool stuff.
Yep.
So I definitely think there has to be something at the end of it, and I think I didn't even realize because it's so like it's so seamless in the game, like those fights with the loot boxes at the end of them, that I kind of figured that they were always there. And I guess that's just like me being naive and like not totally seeing the full picture. Like I only ever really play betas, demos. Sometimes I'll play alphas if they let me for like YouTube, but most of the time I'm playing finished products. So I don't really get to see the full picture.
Yeah.
From what you guys kind of work on and get to go through. And having people come to your house to play the game is awesome, by the way.
It worked out. Well, it came because I didn't want to... I've had... In Severed Steel, I did have people like leak demos. So I was a little bit like... All right, if I find people on the internet, there's a chance this gets out, and that would suck. So I was like, well, what if they can't have it? It's on my computer, and the only way to do that was have people come over, and it worked out. 3 people in my within a driving distance came over and played it, and transformed the game. So
do you have anything in those games that maybe someone on their like first playthrough wouldn't notice that you're like super proud of, like maybe something small? Like you talked about Destruction and Severed Steel. Is there anything in either of those games you're like, man, this is a super cool thing that I got to do?
Yeah, a lot of people made through a lot of Severed Steel without realizing you can flip. Like you can go
really?
A lot of people go pretty far in Severed Steel and they don't know
you can do in both games.
You can.
That's like test ever since I played Dust. That's the first thing I test for.
That Dusk. I thought it was impossible, and then I tried. Someone said it was in Dusk, and I played Dusk. I'm like, oh damn, this does work.
Yep.
Severed Steel, but you get extra slow mo when you're upside down. I think it helps you figure out what the hell's going on.
Okay.
But yeah, in Echo Point Nova, I mean, a lot of people they don't look at the options menu. I get a lot of people. They put requests like, "Can I turn off flipping?" Which is a fine request, and that's already in the options menu. Yeah, a bunch of random like control options and stuff are in the game. People ask for it, and they just don't think to check the
Right.
control menu. So
I don't know why you'd ever want to turn flipping off. I think that's like
the
best
No,
thing.
it's sick. It's sick. I mean, people get motion sick from my games. I don't, but
I don't
people
either.
do.
Sometimes VR hits me wrong. If I'm playing, like what's the game, Pavlov? Yeah,
Yeah.
But if I'm playing this, I think it's probably because I've played so many shooters and so many movement games that
Yes.
it just like fits right into it.
Yeah, I've never felt sick from them. Even like FOV cranked, going a million miles an hour.
Oh, if I can crank it up to 120,
Oh, yeah.
that way I feel like I'm sprinting the whole time.
Yeah, I love. That's another thing about games is FOV totally changes the feel of a game. Like,
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Camera movement, all that stuff.
I love high FOV, but not everybody.
Yeah, and it depends on the kind of game. Like if I'm playing a military tactical slow something or other, I'm at like 100 FOV and I'm turning all the camera shake off. I'm turning it so I can see everything.
Yes,
But if I'm playing
clarity.
a game like yours, I don't care about clarity at all.
Yeah.
I want to feel like I have taken something and I'm going as fast as humanly possible.
Yeah.
And because that's truly like I kind of still I feel like such an old man sometimes 'cause I'm like I miss when games were good. But like truly the indie dev space is the only place I see like a lot of innovation. Like you guys are actually trying to do new and different because like you aren't I know you've got a publisher but you don't have like an EA or a Sony like we have to. It's like, hey Matt, we have to sell this many copies and don't you dare try to do a new IP.
Yeah.
You can like try new things, which is really cool to see.
Yeah, so thankfully, Severed Steel had a publisher. Echo Point Nova has no publisher, so I am liberated from the corporate machine.
Just like Severed Steel would have intended.
Yes, indeed. Oh, indeed, yeah. I totally went bullet time on them. Yeah, I mean, I heard recently, I don't know how true this is, but like the little sister mechanic in BioShock was forced in by the publisher, which is a pretty big...
by 2K.
Yeah.
I guess...
Which I thought what I heard was they wanted the choice to be less obvious, but the way the publisher, the way the publisher wanted them to do it ultimately was like it was really obvious, like save the little sister, don't
save or kill. It's like either one. Which I mean that's another great game too.
BioShock's great, yeah.
Which I guess like again it kind of goes back to like BioShock. I know it was like a spiritual successor to System Shock in a lot of ways. But it tried a lot of new things. Like the little sisters were a new mechanic, and you could affect the outcome of the ending and how evil you wanted to be.
The world was the underwater world and the whole 50s vibe is really very original. Yeah.
But so like those new, I think that's what I've always missed from new stuff is there's just not enough new ideas that are in. Like I think the last new idea game was like Helldivers, and then they tanked that with the Sony locking it behind PSN accounts.
Yes, that's an interesting game because it's very indie, but it's also very corporate. Like it's
a weird mix.
Yeah, forced together.
It's kind of like the first game is 100% indie, and then because I think. That was only on PlayStation as well, PlayStation and PC, just like this one is.
Yep.
And I think it would be less corporate if it hadn't have been as successful as it is.
Oh, sure, yeah. There's money to be made now.
100%. Now I think they're pressuring them to do and certain things and take certain paths that probably are like more focused on like generating revenue.
Yeah.
Which like obviously you want to make money. Like when I buy one of your games, I hope you get paid well on it. But like I know like we're supporting somebody who enjoys making the games for the making the games as opposed to. Here's another $10 battle pass.
Yeah. There's how much money you can make with like an honest, good game. But then there's how much money you make when you really squeeze it and get in like you make it like a casino kind of where you're trying to extract as much wealth from your customers as possible.
Yeah.
And that's what people who have to make the stockholders happy do. Yeah.
Which I think the casino vibe, the casino style of a game is something like so foreign to me still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I just, again, like, and I'm sure you're the same way. Like, I grew up in an era where you paid $60 or
you got the
however
game.
much.
Yeah.
And you got a full game.
Yeah.
And map packs, you had to go to the store to buy them because they were on CDs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, that, it's just so different because, and like, we didn't have fresh content updates all the time. Like, I played Halo 3 for 4 years straight.
Yeah.
And it was because we had community made content and stuff. We didn't have any of that. It's just so different.
Yeah, it's good and bad because it is cool. Like, there's all the weird pay-to-win DLC stuff, but there's also all the free content, especially in the indie dev space. Like, us indie devs, we're always releasing free content updates.
Yeah, March 9th, you just had another update for Echo Point Nova, and that's what I think games today. And I don't know if this is a hot take or not. I think games today are way better than they were 10, 20 years ago.
I'd say
in every single conceivable way.
Yeah.
I just think monetization's gotten worse in some ways.
Yeah. Well, there's surprising facts. If you look in, like, the revenue share of gaming, like, where are the players, where's the money? Like, the mobile space, like phone games. Much money in that. So much money in that. Like,
Clash of Clans was an addiction for me for a long time.
Okay, yeah. So you dabbled in that world. Like, we think like our AAA games make a lot of money, and some do, but I think like the real money's in that mobile free to play space. And
so what I'm hearing is Echo Point Nova Mobile is coming out.
Echo Point Nova Mobile. We're gonna be a Bejeweled
Q4
clone.
2025.
You know it, yeah.
With gyro aiming.
You know it.
I totally agree too, and a lot of the monetization is predatory, and that's what it's super strange too to see some of the practices that they use on mobile now becoming more common in like a PC or console market.
Oh, you can.
I mean, it's disappointing, but
it's inevitable. Like, you can just picture the business meeting where the guy's like, how do we bring mobile monetization models into the Steam space? You know, like, I can just picture it.
You've seen that meme, I'm sure, where the guys are sitting at the board meeting and he says something like that, or he's like, how do we, bring monetization or from mobile games to console? And then, the first person says, oh, well, we should, squeeze them dry. And the second guy goes, we should make good games and sell them for honest prices. Then he gets thrown out the window.
Yeah.
That's what I always think of, is there's got to be at least one. I truly think a lot of the game devs that work for like bigger publishers probably really enjoy making games.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But like sometimes they have to do things that it's like, man, I don't want to, add this 10th princess dragon skin to COD, or I don't want to add whoever. But they're like being made to, essentially, in a lot of ways.
It's got to be a little soul draining, like having to program. You want to make a cool single player game, but now all of a sudden you're like programming like a transaction credit card system. Like you're working on PayPal, and like, what am I doing here? Like, I'm here to make games.
Yeah, so that's why I think game development's so interesting in that way, that the indie space, from what I see, is the only place that like people get to actually flex their creative muscles. And I assume is this your full-time gig, or do you have other stuff that you do?
No, it's my life. Full-time indie dev. I'm very lucky.
Well, this is awesome, because I kind of assume that most of the time when I'm looking at indie games, unless they're like bigger titles like a Dusk or something like that has sold tons and tons and tons of copies, that most people have additional jobs on top of that. And it's almost like a fun hobby that people do for fun now, instead of like I'm going to squeeze as much as I possibly can out of you.
No, I'm very lucky. Like I make enough to live on, and just wake up, work on games.
When did you go when did you go full time with it?
Pretty much when my publisher for Severed Steel started funding me. It's kind of funny. They said, like, we kind of like your game. We're not totally sure yet, so don't quit your day job. Like, do both at the same time. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And I quit my day job. Dove right in, because I'm like, I have to make this work. Like, I'm so sick of working real jobs.
Yeah, just completely burn that bridge. Well, and there's something to be said about that, too. With no backup plan, you probably work a little bit harder.
I'm a big fan of no turning back. Yeah.
Burn the ships.
Yeah.
That's a pretty common saying.
Yeah. So, yeah, pretty much. So, yeah, that was probably like 2020. Yeah, it was like during the pandemic.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, I've not had to go back and do real work since then. So
I think what you do is real work. It's just different.
It is. No, it is. Like I was saying, like trying to make a game that you can send to people, like all the bug fixing, getting performance dialed in.
Yep. That
does feel like real work for sure.
So I guess now that you've done it full time, and let's say you had, you won the lottery and got $500 million and had all the time in the world, would you make that RPG game, or what would be the thing that you'd make? So
yeah, I would dive into that RPG game. But it's kind of funny you say like $5 million,
like the dream game.
Yeah, but it's funny that there's a conundrum there, because I feel like the limited resources kind of forces me to be disciplined and like make something realistic. And it's like if I had $5 million, there's like a chance like I burn through it in never make a game, like because there's just too much opportunity.
Yep.
Yeah, if I had 5 million, I don't know what I would do. I don't know if I'd make another game. Like,
yeah.
I don't know what would happen. You know what I do? If I had 5 million, I might get into modding or something. I might start modding games just as like a hobby.
Would you do it for free and just like throw it out there and just see who takes it?
I'd make
another Morrowind one.
Yeah,
and people would play it this time. They know who you are, so they'd be like, "Oh hell yeah, Matt made one. I'm gonna play that."
Oh yeah, like I thought about like Morrowind's combat kind of sucks. Like it would be cool to make like Morrowind with sick combat, but
yep.
Because I have to make games for a living now, making mods doesn't really make sense because I need to feed. Gotta feed myself and pay mortgage, so
right.
Yeah, so I'd mod if I had $5 million, but until
I
then,
think modding is such an interesting thing too, because I think that's another space where people take games and kind of make them their own. Like
yeah,
Bethesda especially. I really, or like their kind of games. I really hate that they started selling mods on their mod stores for like
weird.
Fallout 4.
It's weird,
which is because mods in general have always been, for me, like ways to add just the weirdest shit to games.
Yeah.
Like I remember I downloaded a Helldivers one that added like Thomas the Tank Engine as the
classic.
the plane that would airstrike the bugs.
Yeah.
And play the tune as it goes by. So that kind of stuff is always fun.
Yeah.
And it can add different ideas.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine monetizing stuff like that. It just makes no sense to me.
Yeah, it's like modders. I mean, modders. It's also funny because you think modders deserve money. I guess I just don't always trust the publishers to do it in the fairest possible way or something like that.
No, and I get you're making product with someone else's product, so I understand.
Yes, yeah, that's true. Yep.
But again, like people are flexing creativity, and I'm sure a lot of people just kind of have. They're almost using it as like a springboard to build a portfolio or build skills to eventually make their own stuff. So
it's a smart way to get into the industry. It's making mods.
So when you make a game, so you release Severed Steel in 2021.
Yeah.
I'm assuming at some point, in a year or two after that, you stop making content for that game because you did several updates for it afterwards.
Yeah.
And then when did you start making Echo Point Nova? And like, for me, I've got like severe ADHD. So if I ever sit down to do a project, like when I try to make videos, I have to work on like 5 at a time.
Okay, yeah.
Because my brain goes in so many different directions, and every time I'm trying to go to bed, so many different thoughts. So like for you, how do you stay focused on just like one project at a time?
Yes. So I started Echo Point Nova, I kind of while working on Severed Steel updates still. I was like dabbling in it on the side. But then I couldn't just juggle them both at the same time. So like I parked Echo Point Nova for a while and just focused on Severed Steel updates. Until like, I mean, it was a weird progress because then like my publisher had a lot of troubles. The CEO of the Severed Steel publisher passed away, and that behind the scenes it made development of Severed Steel kind of was a mess for a while, and then it eventually ended where the publisher gave me back the rights for Severed Steel. So then I was like, okay, so now I have this game again. So I started putting updates for Severed Steel out again until I felt like I generated enough revenue that I could like pause Severed Steel for a while and focus on Echo Point Nova. So it was like a weird, like I was kind of fluctuating between them until I could finally like things were stable, and then I focused on Echo Point Nova.
Yeah, it's got to be tough. I mean, so besides that, and I guess talking about like development cycles, were there any other troubles that you had with either game that were like frustrating points? Like, was there any point where you almost stopped it and were like, I don't know if this is going to work?
No, I'm a little stubborn like that. I never. I mean, I have stopped games before, like my open world RPGs before Severed Steel. And Echo Point Nova did start off as an open world RPG. Like when I made the open world, the code for an open world to work, the intent was originally for an RPG. But then again, I was just like, it was still too much. It was still too much for me, and especially given like the uncertain state of Severed Steel's revenue, I didn't think I could fund an RPG game to completion.
Right.
So it became like a shooter. So yeah, so I guess I kind of dodged and weaved, and I guess I did retreat my open world RPG idea.
So
again.
what is that? Do you have like a certain kind of RPG that you like? Is it like
Bethesda games are huge. Oblivion, Morrowind, Skyrim.
So you like the sort of more medieval high fantasy kind of stuff?
So those games, it's not the setting. It's more like it's more the openness. Like I really like the Stalker games too.
Yep.
I really like a big, interesting world to explore. With like, it feels like the world is moving even when you're not there. Like, have you played the
Right.
Stalker games at all? You familiar at all?
I actually haven't. So
Okay.
yeah, and that's 100% my fault because I am. That's my next thing is to play soccer too because I've got a
good.
buddy of mine
Yeah.
that I went to high school with who's a massive Stalker fan.
Yeah.
And it's on my laundry list of games to play.
Stalker's cool because it's like a really like thick, immersive atmosphere. And like there's things happening around you. Like you're walking around and like in the distance you hear gunshots and there's like bandits fighting mutants. And then you go over there and like then the bandits have to decide do they want to fight you or the mutants, and the mutants also have to decide to fight you or the bandits. And it's just like
What
really
happens when they both turn to you?
oh, you're fucked. And then
They
you
go,
like,
this guy's
Yeah.
rolling up here. Let's just take him out.
Yeah.
He's the problem. He's the
That's
main
the-
character. Let's get this guy out.
But that's the magic. Like it's just I love that. It's so immersive. So and
And those kinds of
games have
worlds
that
I
bit.
love. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, they just breathe.
The breathing world, yes. So that and so it doesn't matter what setting it is, like military or like medieval fantasy. It's more about the mechanics and the breathing.
Yeah, and that's I can't remember I think it was maybe the new GTA game. They were talking about how immersive it's going to be with NPCs kind of doing stuff without you, having schedules, going to certain place, like going
Yeah.
to work, going home.
Yeah.
And like I can see that kind of stuff, and that's what I think. There's this like limitation in people's brains about like if someone doesn't play, like has never played video games, and like if I went to my wife who like doesn't generally play games, and I was like, here's what an RPG is like.
Yeah.
She might think we can literally do anything in this world, like
Yeah.
and the NPCs are actual people, how they operate. And it's like
Yeah.
it's not the case. Most games they just kind of stand and like walk
Yes.
around, and you like talk to them, and they go, "Oh, the arrow in my knee," and like that's
Yeah.
about it.
Yes. The majority of them. It's a very rare treat when like the world is super responsive, because that's hard to do. That's why I had to abandon it twice, because it's really hard to do. That's
So is
worth
it because the goal is so lofty that you've kind of taken a step back from that? Because like I feel like if you have such a passion about it, you truly want to do it right the first time.
Pretty much, yeah. There's no way I can pull this off competently in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah,
I'd go broke and have to go back to a real job.
yeah, we don't want that.
No, thank
No.
you. I'm glad you don't want that for me.
No.
Yeah, and that's the reason why I think a lot of AAA studios don't make games like that, because it's a lot of hard work, a lot of weird bugs to fix for not a clear payoff, because most players are happy without that. It's
Yep.
very rare that games need that.
Yeah, it takes a huge level of depth too.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, you're talking about Stalker. I love kind of stuff like that where there's like random encounters.
Yeah,
like I think
yeah,
Fallout
love
has always
Stalker.
done a really
Yep.
good job about that.
Love Fallout.
Especially Fallout. I think Fallout 4 did a great job. New Vegas is my favorite of the series by a
Sick
long
game.
shot.
Love New Vegas. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people had the same way. Talk about mods. That game's got a bunch of good ones.
It does.
But
yeah.
Fallout 4 was a game that I felt more, like, especially with the settlement system and everything, like there was more going on.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to be there, and there was stuff happening without me there, and it felt more real.
Yeah. Yep.
Than a lot of games. Like if I'm not here, you guys aren't doing anything.
Yeah.
It just feels different.
Yep. Yeah, it's like at the start of our conversation, it said I don't like invisible walls. Like I feel the same way about it. I don't really like NPCs that never leave their spot. Or don't feel like they have their own goals and stuff. Just pulls you out.
This is kind of going off the beaten path, but have you ever thought about adding like a co-op or a multiplayer segment to either of your games and kind of doing that?
So
Like a PvP?
yeah, Echo Point Nova has co-op. It only has
Right.
PvP in that you can turn off friendly fire in co-op.
Right.
So PvP opens up a can of worms, because you need anti-cheat, and you got
Yeah.
it's you versus the hackers for the rest of eternity. Like it's you fixing the exploits, hackers find new exploits, you fix hackers. So you're stuck on that cycle forever, and you need really good netcode, and that takes serious programming chops, and I'm not that good of a programmer. So, and honestly, when I was in high school, I loved PvP, like Modern Warfare 2, Battlefield,
Yep.
all sorts of Half-Life mods, all sorts of PvP Half-Life mods. Played so many hours. But as an adult, I gravitate way more towards single player experiences. So I guess my passion's not really in PvP like it used to be.
Well, and I think I've had a similar experience.
Yeah.
And actually, it's been within the last 2 years that I've like, ever since Titanfall kind of fell off from me, I was kind of
Oh,
like,
that was the last. Yeah.
I was like, oh, I can't. In my head, I go, I can't take the time to get good at another PvP game. Like that was definitely the last one for me. Because
Yes.
I don't get. I'm not like naturally good at a game I jump into. I have to actually play it and learn it,
Grind
and
it.
then I can usually be competent. But yeah, I just thought that'd be interesting because I think Severed Steel, especially with like a destructible environments and that kind of stuff, would be really cool.
It would be cool. There is a game called Out of Action. It's an indie game in development, and that's like it kind of looks like PvP Severed Steel a bit. Cyberpunk environment. You're diving through glass. Yeah.
That reminds me of definitely. So I think because I follow you on, it's Twitter. It's not X.
It is Twitter.
I follow you on Twitter.
It is Twitter.
And I think I saw you retweet a bunch of it because I follow that guy now, and that game looks bananas.
Yes,
Just something so different from what we see.
It's really beautiful. Like the action looks cool, but I think the guy, he's an artist too. Like I think he even from what I've learned about him, he used to work AAA as like a modeler. So
Okay.
the game looks like the guns and the reloads and the sound. Like it's really like it's a feast for the eyes and ears. Yeah, sick looking game.
Yeah, and that's what it just kind of looking at the art style. It's like super gritty
Yeah.
and kind of violent. And I think that for me, like I play in the Gears games, I love that kind of like edgy grit, and it just looks different, just something kind of cool. Mm-hmm. But it should be interesting to see when it comes out, how that kind of looks.
He's worked on that forever.
And PvP games are tough too, because like not even just the there's actually a PvP game that these guys, I guess, are like Titanfall fans, and it's called Diesel Knights, and they were teasing it. They had like an intro like tutorial section you could play through. It's pretty rough, but it's cool. It's a great idea, and it's like a steampunk Titanfall basically.
Okay.
But they're only doing a PvP game, and like that's it.
Titanfall 1. Going back.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
First person animations. It's truly a Titanfall 1 game.
Yeah.
But my concern is like, well, if they ever release it, are people going to play it to the point where like we can actually fill servers and like really enjoy it?
It
makes me so nervous.
That's the tough thing with PvP is it could be the sweetest game, but if people don't play it, it's not going to go anywhere. And then if people don't play it, people don't play it. Like it's like a negative feedback cycle. Yeah. You're stuck at zero. It's tough. It's scary. Yeah.
Well, and for them, like it's a game that I want to succeed.
Yeah.
And I'm outside looking in. Like I've got no interest in it, like personally, but just seeing it, being a movement game, I'm like, I love movement shooters. I want it to do well.
Yeah. Well,
I kind of was like, I don't think they ever responded, but I like tweeted at him. I was like, hey, you guys should think about making a Titan Defense like co-op mode or just something else that we could shoot AI and just in case.
So,
in case, just something.
That is a good point. Like a little something that two to four people could have fun with.
Yeah,
co-op.
Like do some co-op that you can enjoy and have fun with. And
which I think Titanfall 1 had. Did it have a co-op mode? Like some sort of...
Titanfall 2 did, yeah. So it had. Okay. I think they both had Frontier Defense because that was like that's a big thing that people who enjoy the single player game maybe aren't necessarily like acclimated to the PvP and the movement systems. Then they'll play Frontier Defense instead.
Yeah.
And in that kind of way, it's more playable for them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Do you have any other FPS games you're kind of looking at? I guess in this, indie space, AAA space, that you're kind of seeing and saying like that looks like a really cool project. I know we talked about Out of Action.
Yeah,
or maybe any trends you see in the industry that pique your interest.
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to catch up since my last Echo Point Nova update. I've been trying to catch up on my backlog of games. I'm trying to catch up on some of New Blood stuff, like Gloomwood. It's like an immersive sim first-person game.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of Thief.
Yes, that
in a lot of ways.
Vibe. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. It's first-person, not a shooter, but I'm working my way through that.
Yep.
Yeah, the future. I don't know. Man, I wish I had a good answer. There's
It's a tough question. No, it genuinely is.
It is. It's sad that I can't think of anything. I mean, there's all sorts of like indie games on Twitter that I think got potential, but I hope the devs actually can realize it. There's one, Partisan, that looks pretty sweet. It's around on Twitter. And
I don't think I've seen that one. What is it supposed to be like?
it's kind of like Severed Steel in that it's or in Fear, that it's like
Okay.
it's slow motion bullet time shooting, but he's really and it has a grappling hook, but he's doing cool stuff with there's like an inventory system,
Partisan.
like a Deus Ex inventory system. Yeah, Partisan, Partizan. But that's a game where I hope that the devs got to release something playable. We're friends.
So
on,
that's something that you're kind of waiting on and saying, can we actually get something to it we can really see?
Yeah, well, when I was talking earlier about game devs underestimate how important public playable demos are. That's like.
I think it generates interest too. Like I know for me, if I'm like looking to make, I actually have made a video on Echo Point Nova, funnily enough.
Nice.
But just like if I'm looking for stuff like that, I want to like do things that I don't think people have seen. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the video, it's Titanfall meets Doom, which is like my favorite way to describe that game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if people like release those playable teasers, then you'll have people that'll start talking about it and having those conversations. But if you just never release it or do anything, it's tough to get people talking about it in the first place.
One game coming out in a few days. Have you seen Atom Fall? It's like
I haven't.
It's like very Fallout inspired. It's coming out in like 3 days on Games Pass. I'm cautiously optimistic.
What was the one? Atomic Heart. I never played that.
I haven't played it. I've heard mixed things.
I have heard mixed things. 'Cause I remember they released a trailer for it, and it looked beautiful. Like it was a visually like stunning game, and it looked a lot like a mix, like a BioShock and Fallout.
Definitely.
And then when it came out, I never buy games anymore. I wait for them to release. If they're on Game Pass, I'll play them.
Yep.
But it didn't get the best reviews, so I haven't played it yet because I have no time on my hands besides.
No, that's tough. It's
so I'm like I can't really take an hour to waste on a game that I'm not sure if it's going to be good.
That it's hard to just like take a bold leap on like a game with like a 70% Metacritic score. Like it's like my time's so valuable. There's so many games. I have such a backlog. But some people play that game and love it. But it's hard to take. Like my brother played it and he liked it, and I trust his judgment in games. But I just haven't. I'm like you. Like I have only so many hours in a day. I gotta be very picky and choosy about what I play.
Yeah, there's already so many games that pull myself in so many different directions.
Yeah.
Like I've recently developed an addiction to Foxhole.
Is that the third, like the isometric?
It's a top-down shooter.
I've seen that.
It's a full, huge, persistent world.
Tons of players. Yeah.
It's I really like multiplayer games, like a sense of community. Like you talk about a living, breathing world in an RPG. Like that's what I look for in a multiplayer game.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, with real other people. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if I can get into a game that like that. I don't like isometric shooters. I hate it. I can't shoot. Yeah. I can't do anything. So I end up playing medic because that's all I can do. But it's hilarious. Like those moment to moment gameplays. Like if you're in a trench with like 20 other guys, someone throws a grenade, everyone just loses their shit.
Yeah.
Runs in all these different directions.
Yes.
Half the people get blown up.
Yeah.
Somehow it's just it's moments like that. Like I think games are really fun when they're able to be enjoyed with other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it makes such a big difference for me. But again, like I don't really like the PvP stuff unless it's really stupid PvP like Foxhole. Like there's no skill involved. It's just like, I enjoy stuff like that.
I imagine there's just so much chaos going on. There's no room for like skill. You're all just trying to do the best you can.
100%. And you like don't matter. Like you're just another guy.
Yeah.
You're not like there's definitely like, so with your games, the power fantasy is huge.
Yes.
And there's a huge thing to be said about games like that where you are God, like you are the man.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also enjoy games where I am
you're an ant.
Not.
You're a bug.
Like and I think both are fun too.
Yeah. That's the cool thing about gaming is there's all the variety. There's so much variety. It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it'll be interesting in the next few years what FPS games kind of go into. I really hope we trend upward. There's some cool projects coming out in the indie space for sure, and then I think some AAA games like the new Doom is going to be interesting.
What are you looking forward to in the? I'm shooting the question back at you. Hard question.
That's so hard. Doom for sure. If it's a AAA game, Doom, the new Gears.
I didn't know it was new Gears.
Yeah, E-Day.
E-Day.
So that's they did Gears Judgment 4 and 5. And that tanked the series as far as popularity goes.
Interesting.
E-Day is a prequel to Gears of One. It's supposed to be like the first day of the war. I am holding my breath.
Yeah.
And really hoping
Well, I imagine it's
that game is good.
It's going to be Unreal Engine 5, which is pretty controversial as of late.
Yeah. What do you think about game engines? I mean, you make your stuff on Unity, correct?
No, so I'm actually
Or do you use Unreal?
I'm Unreal Engine 4. I'm living in the past.
So
Yeah.
what's different about Unreal Engine 5 that you think? Because talk to me like I'm 5 because I just don't know.
Yeah. No, Unreal Engine 5, Epic had really next-gen like lighting systems and all these crazy ways to like... Typically in games, you have to worry about how many polygons are in a model, and you want to keep them simple so it doesn't tax your GPU too much. But Epic Games found this crazy new way that you can have infinite polygons. You can have a rock with like 18 billion polygons, and it'll perform okay. And you can have like ray traced lighting, and everything will work fine. And it has not. I don't. The charitable explanation is that like Unreal Engine 5 is designed for hardware like 2 or 3 years from now, and people are trying to launch games with it now. And to launch a game with it now takes a lot of optimization that I don't think developers planned for. I think they kind of assumed it would just work, and it's not just working. I looked at Unreal Engine 5, but I don't need tons of poly. My games are low poly, so I have no need for the high poly technology. I was interested in the fancy lighting, but that gets so expensive on your graphics card that it would really limit my audience, and I don't have time to optimize it so it would work well. So I'm still on Unreal Engine 4. It works for my purposes. Yeah.
Well, and you just said to your audience, like, I think there's something to be said too about, like, I don't know how to describe the thought, but the idea of making a game that's more accessible to more people.
Yeah.
And not from like a cost standpoint, like your games are $25, like that's fair. But like from a standpoint of, I don't have to look up the specs and know my game. No, I'm gonna run I've got a good computer. I've got a 3090 and a decent processor and stuff, so I don't really have a problem with running most games. But whereas like I would run your games at like 200 frames, I would run Helldivers at like 40.
Yeah.
And I would rather run the 200, obviously.
Sure. It feels so good. Well, I think for my genre, frame rate is part of the gameplay. Like,
huge.
Yeah, 200 frames just makes the game feel amazing. So that's like, when I'm making the game fun, part of that's making it run as hot, many frames as possible, even on older computers. Yeah.
Smooth gameplay is so big, and that's why I think I've always been so like, I've enjoyed Source games for that reason. Because Source is such a great engine for optimization.
Yeah.
Going back to Titanfall.
Source, yeah.
Yeah, 144 frames a second.
Yeah.
Almost guaranteed.
Yeah.
Apex Legends is the same way. You get 240, but those games look great too. So like, they're able to balance it and do both.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Titanfall 2, the performance is, even when it launched, it was like day one buttery smooth on that on that old hardware. That's a incredible game.
Well, and I'm sure some of that has like to do with the game devs themselves, but I think some of it has to do with the engine you pick too. And I wonder if as new game engines come out, I would hope that people developing the engines would be like, well, we want people to actually be able to make games that people can actually play, and they don't need a 50 series.
Yeah, I think they think that, but they also think they want really beautiful trailers and beautiful screenshots.
Yeah, I just don't care about that. Like, genuinely.
But the masses do.
The shareholders.
Shareholders do, yes.
That's what's so strange to me is, like, if I'm playing a competitive shooter, I turn everything to potato.
Yeah, that's
what
funny.
I do.
It is funny when like a game like Overwatch 2, whatever, wants to look beautiful, and it's like everyone's just turning the graphics down to 0. Like, why do we even?
Yeah, it's like I don't care.
Yeah,
like I don't care about the cloth movement and the hair strands being able to do things. Like I want to play, and as long as I can see and identify a hero and see what I'm shooting at, like I'm good.
Which is funny because sometimes lower graphics make enemies easier to see. If you're like disabling depth of field blur and motion blur, like it can make it easier to play.
I remember my wife recently picked up Fortnite, which is a whole problem in and of itself.
Okay.
But which is actually my fault because I introduced her friends to it. Her friends became addicted to it, and she got into it. So, anyways,
that's funny.
I would play with them occasionally, and they're all playing on consoles, and so they're like set to a certain graphical fidelity. But for me, I would just turn it all the way down, so I could see people through bushes and things. I'm like, oh, he's over there.
The bushes.
Like, where is he? Because they've got beautiful settings and ray tracing and da 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 da.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can see them through the trees.
You've got predator vision active. You just see.
Yeah. Yeah, they hear the. I'm not going to try to do the growl that he does with just the lasers in the forehead.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's cool to kind of see where games are going. I think I'm a eternal optimist.
Yeah.
So I think the market generally, hopefully, trends things to a way that's consumer friendly, and
I think so.
I hope you get the chance to keep putting out awesome games. Like your Severed Steel and Echo Point Nova being the only 2 games that I saw from you on Steam. It's like, where did this guy come from?
Thank you.
How did he learn to do it?
Thank you.
And I'm glad you had success to where you can actually do it full time. That's super good to hear. There's some hope in the world.
Thank you. I'm very thankful. I sometimes can't believe it happened. So, very happy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. So
thanks. No, this was fun. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, well, and it's funny when I messaged you, I was like, this guy has no idea who I am. I'm going to send him the message. If he bites, I'm taking it, and I'm going to run with it.
Nice.
But,
yes.
So I do really appreciate the time. And
Thank you. Me too.
So hopefully RPGs are the next thing.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. Or another shooter. Who knows?
And if it is another shooter, I'm not going to cry about it. I'll be
the fans will be happier with a shooter. Yeah. I think.
Do you ever worry about that? Like, if you make another game that's not in the genre of games you've already made, that could be a problem?
So I've thought about that. I think what I'll have to do is, if I do that, like, whenever I go to show it, it should look like good enough that people get it. They're like,
yeah,
okay, I get why he's doing this. Whatever hook there is, it has to be obvious enough that people are like, okay, like, this makes sense. I don't know what that will be yet or what that will look like yet, but I want people to. It'll be different in a good way, and people will hopefully like it.
Well, and if people have seen the last 2 projects and have seen the product, they're like, I'm going to pay X price and I'm going to get a game like that's actually good and works.
I hope I've earned their trust.
Exactly. And I think after a while, it's kind of like, in YouTube, if you've got an audience already built up, once you have a certain audience level, like, you can generally do whatever. Like, you could post cooking videos. Like, you can do whatever you want.
That's a good point.
People are playing for the product at the end of the day. So if you make a good game, it doesn't matter what genre it's going to be, I think.
That's a good point.
Maybe Tetris 3.0, you can do that. Competitive Tetris, ranked Tetris.
There you go.
Shooting movement mechanics.
Tetris. Yeah, all right. I'll do it.